Hi, everybody. Welcome. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. I'm really honoured to be able to bring this panel discussion to you guys tonight. So my name's Rebecca and I'm the curator at Arbite Gallery in East London. Arbite is a charity and we work with artists at the intersection of art, design and technology. And our current exhibition in the gallery in Canning Town is called Power Play. That I'll let Ed, who is with Cumbri at the moment, I'll let Ed talk about that in a second. But this panel discussion arose out of a conversation that we had with Cumbri Makumbe. Cumbri, just give us a little wave. So Cumbri is an artist in Power Play. And we invited Cumbri to give this panel today, discussing some of the themes within the exhibition. So Cumbri has kind of dissected the title of the show, which is Power Play. So the panel discussion will talk about those two things in conjunction with each other and how they kind of relate more broadly within creative discourse and sort of in culture as a whole. So I'm just going to start by introducing Cumbri and then I'll hand over to Ed. So Cumbri Makumbe currently takes form as a London-based artist and designer who believes in the transmutation of the intangible yet experiential. They are enticed by the materiality of digitally generated matter, with their work residing at the intersection of art, technology, and the ethereal. They place significant effort into speculative explorations of alternative modes of being and thinking that could negate exclusionary acts and ideologies. Their work continually interrogates the multidimensionality of Blackness, exclusionary acts and notions of inclusion, in-betweenness, caring, and transcendence. They are situation dependent, transform and metamorphosize to ceaselessly take on various forms and maneuver through a diverse range of spaces. So Cumbri, thank you so much for joining us. And I'll let Danielle Brathwaite-Shirley and Honore Rodriguez introduce themselves in a minute, but for the time being, I'm going to hand over to Ed. So Ed, do you want to kind of briefly introduce Power Play and also yourself?
Yeah, thank you, Rebecca. I just want to say thank you to all the speakers for being here, as well as everyone on the live. I also want to say a big thank you to Brito and Clifford from the National Gallery of Zimbabwe for helping out so much with this show. I'm Edward Martin. I'm a co-curator of Power Play. Power Play is a group exhibition by Arbite Gallery and the National Gallery of Zimbabwe in Bulawayo, and supported by the New Arts, New Audiences grant by the British Council. It features 8 artists, all working within digital media, moving image and technology. The featuring artists are Mr. Colour, Bolatito Adamirio Vitola, Vincent Bezenhout, Scumboy, King Debs, and Bakisi Sabanda, Cumbri Makumbai, and Isaac Kariuki. There is also a virtual reality iteration of the exhibition created by Christopher McInnes. The exhibition foregrounds the digital art scene in Africa and presents work by digital artists who are from or based in Nigeria, South Africa, Zimbabwe, and the UK. The works discuss the use of technology in creating a sense of identity and place within the digitalized world. And the artists in the exhibition look at the relationships of power experienced in varying ways. The artists address isolation and alienation, societal bias around gender and race, transformation of being, the politics of borders and migration, dark markets of trade, and communities who work outside of mainstream economy. The exhibition was supposed to be exhibited at the National Gallery of Zimbabwe in Bulawayo, Harare, and Mutare in March this year. But unfortunately, due to COVID, it has been postponed until later this year and is now being shown in London until the end of September, which is obviously behind us now. Taking place online, offline, and in VR, the multi-sided exhibition brings to light the fluidity between the virtual and the real. It questions how is power asserted over our decisions and movements, what are the consequences, and how can we think about control differently. If you haven't had a chance already to come and see, I highly recommend coming down to Arbite Gallery to see all the amazing work that the artists have put into the exhibition. It's open until the 26th of September. The gallery is open Tuesday till Saturday from 1 till 6 p.m. I'm going to stop rambling now and let's get to the panel discussion. So I'll let Cumbri to introduce themselves. So,
thank you. Hi. Hi, everyone. I'll just start by saying a big thank you to Arbai for giving me the opportunity to do this and to bring on the other, sorry, my mind's gone blank, for bringing Danielle and Honore to join me today. So basically, the talk, Tactics, Power and Play comes from a deconstruction of the exhibition title, Power Play. And basically, it stemmed from me separating power and just thinking about how is power asserted over our decisions and movements, what are the consequences, and how can we think about control differently. And then in terms of playing, I feel like some people aren't given the position or the space or the time to be able to play. And I feel like playing becomes a part of trying to reclaim a form of power. And then the tactics, what are your strategies of reclaiming that power or claiming the space and time to do so? You might not have any at all. And I think that's where the conversation really just starts to bring out. And so to do this, I brought Honore and Danielle because we actually exhibited together at the BBZ Alternative Grad Show in 2019. And I basically brought them two together because I find a really interesting link between all of our practices. So through my deconstruction of the exhibition title, I started thinking about the fluidity between the digital and the real, and people's practices who really put a focus on exploring both physical works and also digital. And I feel like, for example, with Danielle at the BBC Alternative Grad Show, she showed a performance called You Are Being Let Into a Space at Copeland Gallery. And part of it was digital, part of it was a performance. And I found that really fascinating how the two then intertwine and how they feed into each other. And maybe is there feedback loop between the two? And then with the Honore's Efface, Replace and Repeat, I was really fascinated by the mixing of painting, programming and printmaking. And I think this whole relationship between the physical and the real is something that really drew me to their practices. So I'll let them introduce themselves. So if Danielle wants to go first, could you let the people know what you're about?
Hi, I'm Danielle Brathwaite Shirley, also known as Lady Dan Fua on Instagram. So what I do is I make digital, at least this is how I describe myself, I make digital archives. And so I see my animations, my games, and my kind of sound as a way of archiving Black trans experience. And my most recent kind of work in this is one we'll talk about today was blacktransarchive.com, which is also called We Are Here Because of Those That Are Not, which is an archive that is designed to store Black trans people because I see archives as constantly failing to store us and remember us. Mm-hmm. And so I mainly use performance and any kind of digital medium. Like I don't really know if I'll say animation, blah, 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 because it's whatever is digital, it's what I'm interested in. And so those are the things I kind of use to record our existence.
Mm-hmm. That's amazing. I think that's kind of maybe what drew me to you. I remember at the BBC show, we remember us talking about sound and you were telling me to try Fruity Loops. Exactly. And I feel like that conversation really led me to then start to explore sound. And I think I ended up using Logic Pro X in the end. But I think it's just, I think it's just the idea of the fact that I feel like we both see each other as just artists that happen to just have ideas and then we execute them no matter the medium, but it does start from a very digital standpoint. And I think that's why I brought you on as well. And then we have Honore. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah. Hi, I am Honore. I'm from Brazil, from Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. I've been living here for about 2 years. And yeah, I'm about to finish my master's at Goldsmiths right now. And I do work a lot with digital media. Like I've been doing a lot of work with 3D scanning and 3D modeling recently, but I also really love computer programming. And I'm a big mathematics nerd as well. So there's also a lot of that in my work. So yeah, I'm just basically really interested in technology, digital media, computers, mathematics, graphing, everything related to that. And I would say that when it comes to the theme of my work or what I work, like what I research basically is trying to connect or maybe understand my experiences and things that construct the subject, things that construct myself as a person through these types of digital media. So it's kind of like trying to understand how this subjectivity is constructed through a digital lens or through a mathematical lens. So that's basically where I'm at right now.
Amazing. So to get started, I'm really going to start with maybe the play aspect of the talk. And so I was just really fascinated by when did people start, well, when did you guys start experimenting with technology, and what type of technology was it? It doesn't have to be anything that you had a specific purpose for, but just something that you first interacted with and how that kind of led you to where you are today.
Can I go first?
Yeah, you go.
Okay, yeah. I think the first time, I mean, you just mean experiment with technology in general, or for specific artistic?
No, not
in general. Okay, I would say that was about maybe when I was 3 years old.
Oh wow.
Yeah. At the time, my uncle had like a small office, and he got a computer for his office. But before he took the computer to his office, it was at our house. And I just remember like making my way on the computer, like without him even telling me how to do anything, and just like playing those really ridiculous Windows 95 games on it. Because it was 1995, literally. And yeah, I guess that was the first time that like, and also I remember around the time that for some reason, I don't know, maybe you're too young for that, because I think I'm the oldest here. Like people had, like beepers, I think that's what they're called. Like they basically served no function. I think people just used to like them to text. It was before cell phones were even a thing.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, I remember like not having any idea how that even worked, but I was just like very fascinated by, like the tiny green screen with the little words written in pixels and things like that. And it was just like, wow, that's amazing. And I was like, what, 4 years old? But yeah, it was kind of like around that age that I just became basically like in love with technology.
I love that. What about you, Daniel?
Yeah, mine started with MS-DOS games and trying to get them to run. And that's when it's like because you had to go into the command prompt. In order to get the game to run, you had to type a specific line for it to run. And if you didn't type that line, the game wouldn't run. So you could have the game, install the game, but you can't run the game. And I think I was trying to run a game called UFO. Enemy Unknown, I think that's what's called as well. And I got it working in the end. And yeah, it was like it was a strange experience because it was extremely difficult and it made no sense to me. And it's one of those ones you have to spend a lot of time getting into. But that's when I think I started really falling in love with like getting the game to work, because you had to spend time with the manual. You had to spend time trying to understand what you need to do. And so like the command prompt and the manual and the box itself became part of the experience. And I remember I was watching a talk the other day and someone said that reading the manual used to be just as much fun as playing the game. And I really and with that, I used to read the manual all the time. And then from then, I think it evolved to Sims.
Yeah.
When
I would just had that phase.
Yeah. And obviously because coding was very, it wasn't a thing that I knew. But Sims allowed that interaction where you could spend hours just making and just editing and just creating.
I think you could cheat codes, you could like model load. I remember.
Right, exactly. Yeah, exactly. And I was so into the idea that you could like change what you saw as right, or what was supposed to be, and then you could completely like shift that idea. As well as like in Age of Empires, there was one cheat code that let you have a car. Age of Empires was this old game that it was set in not medieval times, like I guess like
it was very fun.
Yeah, it's I guess like medieval times, but there was a cheat that allowed you to get a car in the game, like an actual car that shot missiles. And that's my first like I guess idea that you could into like modding. It wasn't necessarily modding, but like the idea that something that's not supposed to be in the game can get in if you spend time getting it in. And so that's where my interest was like, okay, how can you do this? How can you put something in this world that's not supposed to be there?
I had a very similar experience because I feel like for me, it was in Sims 3. I was obsessed with that and I would just play for hours and hours. But then it just got to a point where you get tired of the same old aesthetics, you get tired of the rules with it. I then started trying to get what's called third-party objects or objects that were made by communities online, and they'd share them, and then you could kind
Yeah.
of get your Sims to look more like you, and you could
Yeah.
get a house.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it became a way of one, expressing yourself, but also kind of just like shifting the rules where like when you're not allowed to do something, kind of finding a way around that. And
Yeah.
I think that's where my kind of interest in technology kind of started. And I think it's more of this like I think it was more just like hating to accept the way that things were. Because I remember one time I had a phone and I dropped it at school. And when I got back home, I was like, it's not broken. I know it's not broken. So I imagine I literally dismantled it completely. I had all the parts together. And I was like, yeah, if I put it back together again, it'll work now. But I think it was more in the sense that I felt like the thing I like about technology is that there's this thing where it's like everything seems fixable. Or it's like it's modifiable. It doesn't seem to be like it's broken, you can take it to a repair shop, get it fixed. Like in this situation, you can add a code and get it fixed. And I think that's what kind of led me to my practice and the way in which I use technology within that now. So I was wondering, like continuing on that path, how did you then start using technology with art, like using technology with a purpose within your practices?
Can I go? I'm gonna go. Yeah, for me, so it really started off. I started making films, and I kind of wanted to make, you know, like machinima, so like films out of games. But I didn't know how those were made. Like the first kind of machinima I saw was actually Halo Machinima, a series called Red versus Blue, which went on for years. You know, which essentially they use I guess like 3 people play and 1 person is filming 2 people, and then they make it like a series like Friends. And I wanted to create something like that, but I didn't have any of the technology to do that. I didn't understand how to do that at all. So I started making these films, these very bad films, where I would draw and scan my drawings and put them in.
Yeah.
And with my limited knowledge of like animation, I would try and animate these pictures essentially. And then I found this program called PhotoAnim, which allowed you to take a photo of yourself, and within 5 minutes you have a 3D model of that face.
Oh wow!
It's really good. It only works on Windows, but you have Windows, so you're good. Yeah, and so from that point, I'd like started to put like 3D elements in. So I like did a 3D portrait of like Octavia Butler, did a 3D portrait of Audre Lorde, and like I kind of like animated in the program. You could add like skeletons, so I animated them, and overlaid them on my friends singing, and I made a 3D hot sauce bottle and a braid. And that was kind of like, okay, so I can like archive conversations and archive things about people using 3D. And this kind of immediacy that PhotoAnim gave me felt like a really good way to do it, and rather than spending a long time having to like model this. And then through that, after using that for a while, I started more and more trying to make an animation. And it took me a long while, but I made this animation called Blackzilla, which was about this robot that comes down from space, and it returns home. It returns to Earth, and it pushes out these what do you call them? Fog, and this fog can only support Black trans life. And it was about the world morphing to this new kind of fog. Whoever can breathe this air lives, and whatever structures in this world that support Black trans people can stay, but the others must go. And it was about that change. And that's when I really saw, okay, these two can merge. How do I animate and create a Black trans world virtually when I'd actually have no idea what one looks like? That's when I saw it come in.
Wow, that's incredible. What about you, Nora?
Yeah, so for me, I would say it was kind of late into my practice because I come from a painting background. I did painting in my undergrad, and in Brazil, it's kind of like you choose one thing and you only do that thing.
Mhm.
So I went into painting, and it was literally only painting.
Oh, wow.
So by the end of my undergrad, literally like the last year of my undergrad, I met a professor from another department who kind of like was into digital media and things like that. So she kind of like, okay, so the thing is, before I even went to study painting, I was already doing computer programming in school before university. So I was always interested in that. I just never really wanted to make a career out of it, but I did study it. So, and I actually went I did my undergrad for about 2 years in sciences as well before I started doing painting.
Wow.
So for me, it was kind of like I was painting because I thought that was all I was supposed to do, because that's all my university told me that I should be doing. But then by the end of it, I was like, no, I can actually, like have this interest of mine in my practice. And that's what this professor helped me with, like, because she was the only one I met in the university who actually also liked that. So that was when I realized I could use computer programming to do art and use other digital media to do art as well. And I did my first work, which was a bot that went through Google Maps, Google Street View, and created videos from, basically created videos kind of like traveling through Street View. So that was the first thing I ever did using digital media, and I was very happy with it. So, but like I said, it was only at the end of my undergrad after doing like 4 years of painting and painting and not really being happy about it. But yeah, and ever since that, I have barely ever painted anymore. But I still like, I really like physical, like more physical media, like painting and printmaking and sculpture. I do like that. So that's why there's still some elements of it in my practice. But I try to always center everything around the digital, around technology. So that became like the main thing. And the painting or printmaking or whatever just exists around it.
No, that's really interesting. And I like how there seems to be a common thread of technology kind of allowing you to fulfill something that you feel like you either felt that something was lacking, or you allowed you to do that you couldn't do before.
Exactly.
And that's how it stemmed in my practice, in the sense that I just started playing with 3D software. I just started experimenting with Cinema 4D. And it came from me listening to music and then watching a music video and then hating the music video and being like, I have to make something more interesting.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like they didn't do it right. Very bold of me, but still. So I literally just started creating like these 20-second videos that basically illustrated the music, and it just like I pushed it more and more, and I made like these terrible videos. Some of them were cute, some of them were bad, and then through that, it just became this whole idea of like kind of pushing myself to see what I could do next. And I think it literally just came out of this like act of playing and just wanting to like best myself as if I was being competitive. So I remember after these videos, I then started getting really interested in this idea of like putting 3D objects in videos of spaces. So I think it's called motion tracking, and I literally videos and I did insert objects into them. And then I think it was like a year after that where I started really just contextualizing the software and realizing there's aspects of it that relate to how I think about things. And then I started using 3D software to illustrate some of those ideas. And then it literally just went on from there. But it really did kind of stem from this whole idea of there feeling like there's something lacking, and it giving me the ability to do something that I couldn't previously do. And so kind of following on from that, I was wondering if Danielle, would you be able to talk about Black Trans Archives?
Yeah, okay. So Black Trans Archive was a project that I did, I've released in February actually. And originally it came from I did this big project about looking for Black trans representation in history. and finding a very small amount of Black trans representation and almost no first-hand accounts of Black trans people. And at that point, I thought, this archive has really failed us. It's really failed to see us and really failed to store us. And so I decided that I wanted to create an archive, but not using the same means that archives have been using in the past, because if I use the same means, then we could easily be erased again. Then I'm going to be using the same tools that erased us. And so this idea of making something interactive, making this a kind of game, something that your choices mattered, that you determine what you will see, as well as your identity determines what you can access, became a really like key sticking point when thinking about an archive. And so working with like 15 different Black trans people, we designed avatars for all of them, and we did like workshops to think about what we wanted to store and how we could use like fiction and speculative fantasy to tell our stories, rather than it having to be something that we think cis people are expecting to see, people that aren't us expect to see, and not doing that. And I had a lot of conversations about not having trauma in the work and not making it a trans tourism, essentially. Because we got really worried that people would come to see the work expecting to play a trans person and to play a trans person's experience. And there was some writing that I didn't write, that someone wrote about the work before they had seen the work, that pitched it as a trans tour, without seeing the work, without talking to me, anything. And that like reaffirmed that like, okay, like what we're doing is really great, because it's not that at all. But it's really important that people who have that mindset come to the work and get denied access and cannot access certain things, that we can't let them archive. They're not ready to see these things. They're not ready to appreciate the privilege and the greatness that comes with being around Black trans people until they can support us. And so after working with like these 15 Black trans people, we designed avatars, we designed landscapes, and then I kind of like pieced everything together in a kind of narrative way. And then the archive was finished. We coded it together and finished it. But a big part of it was making sure that it worked online and making sure that it was very accessible. Because another thing about archives that I found annoying is that there's a big trans archive in America actually, that I can't go and visit because I can't pay £600 to each way to go fly to an archive, see what they have and fly back. And there's also another one in New York, which is this, what's it called? Oral Trans History Archive, in which New York people in New York who are trans can go to this archive and record themselves talking. Or someone could say, I want to record trans people in New York. But again, this is not situated here. It's situated in a very particular place. And the reason I wanted this archive to be online is that it can be accessed anywhere and used by anyone, and it not be restrictive in terms of having to be involved in art, having to be involved in a gallery space that you feel may not be one that's yours, having to travel. So you don't have to travel to see it, it's right there for you. And it was so important that this could be accessed by those like me who did not see themselves represented before, but could see themselves represented online in a format that they're not used to.
No, for sure. And I think that's why I really wanted you to kind of explain Black trans archives a bit more, because it really feels like you're seeing like a lack and you're trying to fill that space specifically, and you're doing through a digital means. And I feel like it's the fact that I feel like it doesn't necessarily have to be digital, but it ends up having to be digital in a sense, because of what you're wanting it to offer and the way you're wanting it to be available for all to an extent. And you're wanting to kind of in a way it's like in your control and be non-specific in terms of like geography.
Right, yeah. And also there's this thing about like, I feel like a lot of trans identity or trans visibility is online. And that's where we find a lot of information and ourselves, to be honest. Like I found myself online. I found myself while looking at M to F sites and pro anomia sites, which don't look at pro anomia sites, but that's how I found myself. And so like there's this thing of like, I'm hoping that someone searches, get the right thing for it to come up, and they can find this bit that says, hey, by the way, not only can you be represented here, but you don't have to be represented in any of the ways that people tell you.
Mhm.
And you don't have to look and sound or say any of the things that people tell you. You can write a story and that's good enough to represent you.
Mhm.
And that you should be allowed to have that opportunity to write that story.
Mhm. And I have some questions about that, but I'll come back to that later. But I really just want to hear also about Ife's replaced by Honore.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, the work that you did at the BBC Alternative Grad Show, because I saw, I think like we know that program was a part of it, but I feel like people maybe aren't aware of like how you did program the work,
Mm-hmm.
what the work actually did.
Yeah. So you're asking about how it worked.
Yeah.
Okay. So it was basically it was composed of a camera and multiple screens.
Mhm.
And the camera was a camera, but it was also a server that connected with all the different screens along the work. So it would capture the environment or wherever or whoever got close to the camera.
Mhm.
Every, I don't remember if it was every minute or every 30 seconds, but anyway, it was something like that. And then it would connect the image to each one of the screens and then overlay the photo it took with the photo that was already on the screens, that was like a cut out photo of myself as a child.
Mhm.
So that would be updated every minute or 30 seconds or so. So it was basically like this kind of communication between the camera, the piece with the camera, it was a fresco with everything else.
Oh. And then what was the idea behind it in relation to like the whole work?
Yeah. So when I did that, I was very interested in like Christian frescoes from the Renaissance and before. I was just like, I was basically in love with what was his name? I forgot his name, but I was in love with him. Some old white dude from Italy who painted frescoes, and I wanted to paint a fresco basically because I was thinking about this idea of those specific images, those Christian images, and the dissemination of those images, and how all of that contributed to the reinforcement of a certain type of power, certain type of narrative.
Mhm.
So it was basically around that idea of like dissemination of power through images and what narratives are recounted or are basically told by those disseminated images.
Mhm.
And that's basically what drove the work. So it was kind of like this idea playing with digital images and dissemination of digital images, but also having this link to the idea of the fresco and different types of image making, which is why I had a digital image and a painting as a fresco. And I also had an etching. So it was kind of like circling around this idea of different types of image production and image dissemination, and consequently the dissemination of power that happens through images as well.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's why I kind of wanted to bring it back to you before I continued with Danielle, because there seems to be a clear link with this idea of a very clear awareness of certain power dynamics in the specific process. For example, with Danielle's archiving, and with you is with image production. And I was wondering, does this, like, to what extent does the idea of power really play into your practice? Like, do you acknowledge it, or do you just like, do you continue with an awareness of it?
I guess for me, I try to, I would say, reclaim the power for myself.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, with that work, I try to, I don't even know if reclaim is the right word, but just take it for myself and use it as I want, because I know that my type of narrative would not have been told like that. So I just want to feel like I have the power to do that.
Mm-hmm.
By making the images I want, disseminating the images I want.
Mhm.
So I guess that's how the idea of power plays into my work, because I'm basically just trying to take it for myself.
Mhm. No, amazing. What about you, Danielle?
Yeah, power. That's an interesting one, because I often feel that I don't feel powerful when I make these works. Like I don't feel like a sense of power. I feel like I want to build a community, and I often fail. That's how I feel. I feel like I know that. How do I describe it? Like basically, I want to see these things made. And I need to see them. And because I'm interested in tech and it governs pretty much most of what I do in my life, I need to see ourselves represented within it. Which is why I find like Inori's work really interesting. It's because like I see a power in that you write the code. And for me, that's like a foundational element of something, which means that the bottom of it will be Black and queer, like regardless of what's put on top. And I find that that is where I not necessarily power comes in, but like the real kind of archiving comes, because I really feel that like if we made a Black trans game, app, phone, whatever, and if from bottom to top it was made by Black trans people, like that really says something to me. Like I'm not exactly sure what it says, but I know that that means regardless of how many elements are destroyed, the foundation is still Black and trans. And I feel like that's where I guess the power in my work, or the feeling of that comes to, or the closest thing, because it's not. I say in every single thing now, but so when I try and build like a landscape, the first thing I do is like set down an image of something that has to do with a person. So often like the ground is actually made of like someone's skin or black hair, and then I warp it until you don't recognize that. But that foundational element is still there. And more in my practice, I'm trying to build this kind of foundational element of like archiving. So essentially, if you looked in the code, if you tried to rip the data, we'd still be there smiling at you. And that's why I feel that the real power is that I want to see a code base that is designed by Black people, so that when you look at the code, the references make more sense to you than it would to someone who's not Black, who's been coding. And so what would like Black JavaScript look like? I don't know. Like what would Black C++ look like? You know, would it be called B++? I don't know. But like what does that mean to have that as an element within tech? What does it mean to have a code that is based on Blackness, that is completely a language made from Blackness? That's why I guess that's the power to me.
No, for sure. But
That's amazing. Yeah.
I think I completely get that, because I feel like I've discussed that within my own work as well. For example, I have a work called Evo's Turn, and within that it's moving image work, and basically it's just this character that I've created called Evo, who's my voice clone, and I created using software that essentially like I spoke to it for about 2 hours reading out sentences that it gave me, and then it learned the way that I speak and then essentially cloned my voice. So basically the work has my voice clone reading this monologue. And within it, I allow this voice clone to kind of take on a personality of its own. And it begins to it starts to question its Blackness in the same way an AI questions its sentience. For example, it says, it talks about how because it came from me, does it consider itself Black? And I think there is something about it, and you can't really explain it, but there's something about it that brings in this idea of power, and also kind of questions not the validity, but maybe the arbitrary value, and maybe what can stem out of it. And I feel there's a certain power from that. I feel like I'm not explaining it correctly, but maybe this is something we can get into later. But Danielle, I was really fascinated by you talking about this whole idea of creating a game or an experience or just something that's created with Black trans people all the way throughout it. And I feel like within your practice, I wouldn't say you're anti-hierarchical in the sense that I feel like you're very aware of the structures that exist. And I feel like there's this whole idea of shifting power dynamics within your work, especially in terms of when you decide, or you create experiences and you get different experiences depending on your identity. For example,
Right, yeah.
Trans Archives, you have a section that I think at the beginning it asks you straight away, are you Black and trans? If not, you have to click on this. And then if you are, click on here. And I remember going on both experiences and having two completely different experiences. For example, I remember I clicked on a Black and trans, and I think it felt so motherly. And I know that in your practice, you, I don't know whether you've put it in writing, but on your Instagram page, it says you describe yourself as a mother.
Yeah.
And I was reading a lot of Audre Lorde,
Mhm.
and she describes herself as a mother. And I was wondering, do you take your label as a mother seriously, or was that just something you decided to put?
Well, yeah, no. Well, one, I'm gonna be a mum in like what, 2 days, because I'm having a baby. But two, yeah, like in this work that I made recently called thepathyouwalk.com. I'm all into .com work right now. There's this thing I wrote about called the sisterhood stew. And I believe in this thing called the sisterhood stew, which is kind of me trying to describe what like transness felt to me, is that it's a pot that's continuously cooking, but it's always full, because when someone takes a spoonful, someone else puts something back in. And that's kind of how I kind of feel that my practice wants to work like. It wants to work in this way that you're giving as much as someone's taking. And I really feel like that is encompassed within how trans people live. We don't live by ourselves. We live with a community around us that is supportive of who we need to be. But there's another thing about it is that I don't believe in a passive audience. Like, I honestly don't think that there is a passive audience, and I hate passiveness in audience members. I hate someone sitting there and saying, I understand this, when they couldn't possibly understand an experience that's not theirs. And we're not trying to make them understand either. And so for me, a big part of the work is making the audience member responsible for what they see and responsible for the time they spend with the work. And so it's almost impossible to be passive with a lot of my work, because the point is, if you're not passive, you don't go forward. Just like video games, if you're not finishing the level's essentially over, you know? And that kind of passiveness is something that I really try to avoid, because this idea of trans tourism, Black tourism is very present within our field. It's very, it's often the case that people want to access our work because they see like, okay, this is Black work, this is trans work, let me see what it's there. I find it interesting because X, Y, Z, of their own reasons, rather than our reasons for making the work. And I want to play with those expectations that they bring to the table and say, no, like, no, you made that choice, get out. Like, if you're not here to actually support us, get out, don't want you here. And I think it's really important to play with those aspects, because more and more we're just consumed. More often we are just easily consumed. Our aesthetics are easily taken as a value of saying, I love this aesthetic, I'm going to take it for myself and use it in the way I want it to be used. And I find that like making someone an actual core part of the work, even if any particular person, making them a core part of the work, their choice is a core aspect of the work, means that they interact with the work in a completely different way. Like, when people play Black Trans Archive at the Science Gallery, some white people were embarrassed about their choices. They found it hard to choose particular choices, and they didn't want to choose those, but the room was full of people looking at them, waiting for them to pick. And the same with Black trans people. And I had this conversation with one, and they said, I was waiting to be hit by trauma. Like, I was waiting to be hit by a traumatic event and something sad, and it never happened. And to me, that was a point of success, saying that like, they felt it there, they knew it existed, but I did not recreate the trauma. The work was not the point of recreating the trauma. I've gone off tangent. Huh?
It was about working through that.
Yeah, it was about, you live with that. I don't need to mention it because you already live with it. You already have that with you. If you do or you don't, you know your own experience. And the work isn't about, let's talk about our trauma times, let's talk about the sad times. It's about stories told by Black trans people. It's about these lives that are stored. And I think that's something that we often don't get the chance to do within our work. Like, if you make a work about an orange, someone will say that work is about a Black trans orange. You know, and you just don't get the opportunity to be telling a story, to be just saying what you need to say, what you want to make.
And I think these are all really important things. And I think I really liked where you brought up the idea of passivity. And I think within the context of what's happening right now, or what happened a few months ago with Black Lives Matter, I think the idea of passivity is something that was really highlighted. For example, I think basically with the Black Lives Matter movement, and basically I feel like the Black community really demanding more from allies, and really kind of asking them to really understand that allyship isn't passive, it's active, and really demanding more from them. And I think what you're talking about with participation is, again, a request to, well, not a request, it's a demand to either get out or to do the active work in order to kind of like help deal with the situation instead of just standing there and watching, which I find really helpful. And I was just wondering with both of you, like, do you think what happened with the past few months is ever going to like seep into your work, or are you separating the two? And if so, why? It's just because I have an interesting position in relation to it, because I feel like I've been doing my work. I've been doing this before the whole Black Lives Matter movement resurged over the past few months. So I feel like I can take into account everything that happened, and I am taking account everything that happened. But I think I've been doing the work. I feel like I still have room to learn. I'm moving forward with that. But I'm really interested in what other artists are doing forward. Are they really allowing that to become a central part of their practice, or do they feel like they're taking a different route in order to do what they think is best?
Yeah. Can I go? Is that okay?
Yeah.
I've been talking a lot, so you can tell me to shut up if you want me to. So, yeah, I think it is. I mean, obviously, I make all my work for Black trans people. That's clear.
Yeah.
But I think this pandemic plus this pandemic of anti-Blackness that we've been living through, our whole lives, plus what's happening now, like this word pandemic has seeped into my work. Like it's definitely seeped into my work, because people are often scared when white people start dying, but not when Black people start dying. And I was making this work, which got completely erased actually, thanks to my computer. And I have a whole thing about that. Oh my God.
Windows?
Anyway, yes, Windows, Microsoft's own computer, and corruption, and I guess just, yeah. But I made a work called Speaking Through Plastic. It was a text-based video game. Not text-based, sorry, a visual novel-esque video game. And it was all about Black trans people have been resurrected. Every single Black trans person in history has been resurrected. And society treats it as a pandemic and quarantines all of them.
Oh, wow.
And doesn't know what to do with them, because they believe they have a power, and they don't know what they're going to use that power for. And so it did really seep into my work and play a big role. And now, because that game got deleted, I'm 4 Airbyte actually. Maybe I don't know if I should say it so much, but I'm creating let's just say a new game based around that. Yeah, for next year. But yeah, like I feel like it just really has, especially like these protests, and seeing these protests, and also seeing the cars drive through the protest. I was watching a video today of that, and seeing how this alt-right movement has come back and is really starting to form again. I feel like I find it almost impossible to ignore avoid.
What about you, Nora?
I would say that maybe yes and no at the same time. I think it's kind of, in a way, it has obviously affected me as a person. And like Danielle said, Blackness is something that we have always lived with. So like we as Black people have always known these things existed, and we have always seen that. But at the same time, just experiencing something that happened to the degree that happened a few months ago, it was my first time experiencing something like that. And it has affected me a lot as a person. But since my work, I mean, I think it's still kind of early for me to say if that has affected my work, like the work itself. But like I said, since my work comes a lot from my own experiences and my own subjectivity and trying to understand how I navigate this world, it has made me feel more like I need, like it's kind of like it has lighted this fire inside me to actually need to put out these Black experiences into the world through my practice. So in a way it has, yes, but at the same time it's something that it always has existed in my work. So I guess in a way it's more like it has made me realize that yes, this is definitely needed in a moment like this. But like I said, it's kind of early to like maybe see any concrete results of me trying to put this into my work, because I haven't really made a lot of work since then. But like I said, it's definitely something that has made me have this need to put these experiences into the world because they're needed.
Yeah, I think exactly. I think it kind of created like it highlighted an urgency. Yeah. For work. And I don't think it meant about it directly being about the pandemic of anti-Blackness, but more so about how we move out of that. Yeah. And a lot of artists before that was happening, they were already doing that. And I feel like all of us included in that. So I feel like for me, I think it just highlighted an urgency of my own practice and what I feel like my role is, but I think also with the practices of other people. I feel like, for example, I feel like the urgency with Danielle's practice and yours, to me, always screams out, and that's why I brought you guys here.
Yeah, and I also think that like, independent of what certain Black artists work with in their practice, like every practice that comes from any Black artist for me is urgent. Like it doesn't really matter what they work with. I just feel that those are the kinds of things that we need to put out into the world, like independent of what their themes are or what they work with. Like every single Black practice is important and urgent to be heard.
And I feel like that's just kind of highlighted the power aspect of why I created what I was trying to go for with this talk. And I think the reason I wanted to talk about power in relation to play is this whole idea of like, I think with everything going on, I feel like there's a kind of reclaiming of power that comes into play. So for example, with you, Honore, I was really fascinated by your use of 3D scanning. And like also I've been seeing you and you've been doing 3D printing within clay. Yeah. And I like how playful your practice seems to feel. And I feel like I can kind of tell there's some enjoyment, like there's enjoyment they get out of that. And even with Danielle, I feel like you literally create experiences to be played. And I know you're very much interested in gaming. And I think I just wanted to know whether it's reciprocated in the sense that you get like this feeling of like a reclaiming of power from playing against the odds, where you're not, like, not necessarily giving the time or the space to really give it the opportunity to play. You're kind of having to make that for yourself. And I was wondering what your thoughts were on that.
I guess for me, it's kind of funny that you say that, because it's true. I've been getting a lot of enjoyment doing all of that you mentioned. But at the same time, it's funny because this is a period of my time where I'm under a lot of pressure to actually finish all of these, because final exhibition coming up and all of that. But it's also the one time throughout all of my practice that I felt the most playful and just feeling like doing whatever and finding the best way I can actually enjoy my practice and enjoy doing the things I want without actually caring about anything else, caring about, I don't know, assessment or being marked or showing an exhibition or having my work judged by anyone, and basically just enjoying and looking at my work like they're my children, basically, and just loving everything I do. So in a way, everything has been very playful for me. And I also think there's this contrast between, like I said, playing and power, because you're not supposed to play, like you're supposed to make work, and work has, you know, like this idea that it's not supposed to be something that you enjoy. So I guess I really like that you can be playful in your practice. It doesn't need to be, you know, like this very rigid idea of, you know, production and then exhibiting and then selling your work and then trying to make something that's, I don't know, marketable or profitable or whatever, but being able to just give into the practice and just actually enjoying it.
And talking about mass production, I was just going to say, didn't you have some of your work at Piccadilly? And I was just,
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're having like your work like there in a space that's like like the epitome of like capitalism and mass production. Like how did that feel?
Oh, it felt I still can't really process how it felt, but it was definitely an interesting experience because it's something that I would have never thought would ever happen. But I guess, I mean, talking a little bit about it, I was invited by this project, Circuit Project, that's showing artists, graduating artists and emerging artists videos in Piccadilly circuits. So they had this idea of like trying to make art accessible, like public art, into one of London's most busiest places. So in a way, I really like this idea of like playing art in situations where you wouldn't really expect art to be.
Yeah.
So it's a place that I would have never really thought my work would be, and in a way that was very interesting to see it like that, like having some, I don't know, Coca-Cola or Gap ads, and then a second later it's just my work in there. So it was very interesting, and also because of just the scale of it, because I naturally do very small scale work. That's what I enjoy doing. I enjoy small scale. So having my video be just shown in that massive screen was very weird, but also very cool.
Imagine it must have been something interesting.
Yeah.
But just to kind of start tying things together, I was just wondering, like in the new landscape that we're in right now, post pandemic of anti-Blackness and post COVID-19, and with all the changes that have taken place, I feel like there seems to be a clear turn towards to there being a heavier reliance on technology for communication, for gathering, for making work. And as someone, or as a group of people who like use technology quite often, I was wondering, has your relationship to technology shifted because of that?
Yeah. I think, well, one thing to think about, I thought that this moment was really affecting because it made me realize like how like frugal a lot of like people like us jobs are, and that we were working in lots of physical spaces, at least a lot of my friends were, and then because that stopped, they had no income, no reliance on anything, no money. And it was strange having this big surge of interest in people approaching me and saying, okay, we want you to do this digital thing, but also not knowing what comes with that. Not knowing that when they asked for a 3D model that's rigged, that's animated, it doesn't take a week to make. And it takes a lot of time and a lot of energy to actually make these things. And so this reliance on you to produce something for content without actually care for the artist came a big thing. I feel like a lot of institutions wanted content very quickly and wanted a lot of digital stuff, but actually didn't actually know how to host that or how to care for it. I had a lot of times where people say, we would love to have this game on this site. And I say, great, do you have a coder? And they say, no. I said, well, I don't know I can't put it on your site. I don't, what's your site done on? I don't know what my site's done on. So it's like a lot of, there's these big gaps between wanting technology to be increased in the gallery, to be a larger presence in the gallery, but at the same time having a lack of investment or care in what that means in terms of this person making this and you showing it on your platform, which is why it was so interesting to see at the beginning that live streams was such a thing people went towards. And they thought it was like a great way to show performance, but a lot of the times a performance did not translate to a screen. And because it's a medium, working online is a particular medium. Making an online performance, doing a Twitch stream that's successful is a different kind of medium. And there's like a real lack of understanding of that. And so I felt like it made me rely a lot on like taking my time and like actually like making sure that what I'm making is good and makes me happy rather than makes the deadline happy.
Exactly.
No, I completely agree with you on the deadline thing, and then the teacher's just wanting you to, you know, like send things as quick as possible. And I think that for me, I wouldn't say my relationship to technology changed much, but it has like this period and like seeing so much go online and everything, it has made me want to have more control over every aspect of any digital thing I make. So for example, it has made me want to learn a lot more different platforms or different coding languages or different programs to make things that I wouldn't have really learned before, because I would think, oh, I'm not really gonna need that. But I think that it has made me have, it basically made me have this need to learn more technological aspects that I would use in my work, just so I can have more control over it.
No, I think I completely agree with both of you. For me, on like in addition to that, I think there was just such a demand for stuff, to the point where I think it got to the point where it's like I can't work at the same pace that I usually do, and I feel like that kind of created like this distaste with technology and like the way that people are interacting with me because of it. And I feel like because I have like, I describe in my practice that I have a symbiotic relationship between the digital and the physical. I feel like it kind of then made me lean towards more the physical. But I think, yeah, it's been an interesting time in relation with digital artists. Some people have been thriving, some people haven't.
Right.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just going to say that you're talking about your relationship to the physical. This period has also made me have a different relationship to physical art making, which is why I have started doing the ceramics, and I'm also now working with fabric and weaving and knitting and things like that. So it's kind of like, I don't really know what happened there, but I'm thinking about making more physical work now, as opposed to before I would have just made a lot more digital.
I went the complete opposite way.
Really?
And I went way more team-based, way more like widening participation in terms of working with like different types of coders and like different kinds of engines, as well as like looking at what online MMO communities do to build their communities and to build those kind of like physical long-lasting spaces online, as well as like I really looked into admin, like how you, what's it called? I don't know what it's called. God, I've forgotten the word now. But basically, so say you have an online MMORPG, but to make sure there's no like drugs being sold on it or like black market stuff going on it, they have like a lot of admin behind the scenes, moderation. And I looked at a lot of moderation actually in this time, and like thought about how you'd create like this kind of online space. Like Facebook allows you to create like black groups, but ourselves, how we would make that, and then what it would take to moderate that. So I went really deep into this online space and world and dreaming of this trans MMORPG, like I don't know, Black Trans RuneScape, for example. And then what that would take to moderate, the idea of moderating that. So that's where I went. physical can go away. Yeah, but it became a lot more about like building a team. Like my dream is really now needs to build a team. Like I need to work with a team, like a constant team of Black people that we're all hired, all paid, and we have a salary that we know is coming in, rather than it may be disappearing when COVID rears its lovely head again.
But no, I hope that actually does happen, please, because I need a Black trans RuneScape now that you said.
Wow, funny you mentioned that. Because so I'm actually working on this project. It starts. I released an open call for it recently, actually. But we're gonna make like a mini online MMORPG in brackets, like based on RuneScape, kind of like an archive again. But like we're gonna make all the music together and all this stuff, in the hopes that eventually I will be making a online MMORPG for Black trans people. But that ain't happening yet. But that's the dream.
At least it's coming.
Yeah.
That's what we like to hear. But I also just wanted to ask, are there any ideas that you want to realize, but I feel like there are limitations for you to be able to bring that to life in terms of technology or just in terms of means? I wondered if there are any ideas that you had that you were hoping to do and maybe we should look out for in the future.
Yeah. I mean, maybe you go first. I've been speaking too much. I always speak too much.
I honestly, I feel like, yeah, I have a whole notebook filled with ideas of things that I have no idea how to make, or I have no money to make. But I don't know if I can say of anything specific, but in my head, I have this idea of like a wall filled with like a lot of tiny screens running different scripts and different, like snippets of code, and then showing images and whatever going on around them. And that's one of the ideas I have, but I think a lot of them actually involve a lot of different screens and monitors. And I guess that's why it kind of holds me back, because I do not have access to all of that. But I would say that right now, with the things that I want to do right now, I kind of have access to most things.
Yeah.
For the time being. Like I do have access to 3D printers and 3D scanners and all of that. But yeah, there are many things that in my little notebook that would require me to learn a lot of computer programming. And have access to like different types of hardware, or different types of like computers or monitors or things like that.
All right. Yeah, I think I want to make as I mentioned, kind of this online platform in brackets that allows you to create an avatar, so you don't have to use a photo of yourself. But also that you can host events in the world. So example, if we were going to do this talk in the world, we could do it. And a place that does that already very well is if you get a VR, what's it called? Oculus Go. They have these free apps, and most of the free apps are actually social apps. So you make your avatar and you sit and you walk around and socialize with people. And what they do on these free apps is they actually get people to come in and do talks. So I think they had Tesla come in and do a talk, and so they get like, I don't know, this is a big example. This hasn't happened, but Beyonce come in and do a concert, but they get people to come in and actually do talks on stuff, and they teach yoga and all this stuff. And my idea would be make a world, a 3D world, in which you can create your own avatar. It's a Black trans world. All this stuff, moderation is done by us as well. But at the same time, have it grow its own communities by allowing people to do these events, set these events up, and have a set number of people to come in and do them. And so in the hopes that eventually it would grow so that we would be able to put our hands off and say, okay, you own this now. And there's something, and I don't know how to do it, but I wanted to have a way to transfer over ownership in terms of like, I get really worried about these groups forming this like strong connections and making this community that wasn't what the thing was initially made for, but is a really good community, and that being lost when the admin closes down the game. And me not wanting that to happen. And so this idea of making something that allows ownership to be passed on in a kind of open sourced way.
No, that's amazing. I think, I've been thinking about, in terms of what I would like to be able to do, but I don't think it's possible yet. I think it's this, I really want to experiment, because I'm really interested in the relationship between the physical and the digital. I've really been interested in haptics. So basically the whole idea of like touching and like sensations in terms of technology, how that could like give you a different experience. Because imagine VR, but then with haptics, and then that's that like step to level up. Because imagine being able to like have like a glove or something, and there's an object within VR, and if you get closer to it, it starts to actually make you feel something. And it's like an extra level of immersion. But I think with a lot of people that I know that use technology, I feel like they very much are aware of their limitations and the limitations of their equipment. And they always dream of like these pieces of like impossible technology that will never actually be able to be made. And I thought it would just be really fascinating to find out. And I was wondering, just to finish off, and maybe we can start answering some questions after, is this is a good one. What is your definition, or what is your definition of an artist's role in society? It doesn't have to be what you feel is the well-known one, but what do you think specifically?
God. Oh man, that's hard. Like, yeah, I don't know. The artists that I know, they're like hell-bent on making sure that certain voices are heard and certain spaces are created. Like the Babe Show made sure that a space was created for us to all to exist, and maybe are responsible for, I mean, yeah, hands down, maybe are definitely responsible for a reason that we're sitting here today, you know, because we now have that belief that, yeah, we do deserve to be in those spaces. But a lot of artists just believe that they just want to fuck around and do nothing. So they got the privilege to do that, then okay. But I feel like the artists that I get the most from and feel so strongly connected to are the ones that are like building a future for other people to have a better kind of like life, essentially, like to make it easier for the next person to do better. I like if we get to a point where we can all make rubbish art and have a have a career, that's will be because of the people that have come before us.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think that, at least for me, with the artist I look up to and everything, for me, I see the role as kind of, I don't really like this word that much, but like an inspiration. And I see it kind of like a network, just a network of influences, and like just things that cause something or someone to act a certain way, to think a certain way, and maybe to, you know, like develop certain sensibilities, or basically just, you know, like to be able to enjoy life more. So it's kind of like to give this inspiration to someone or to a group of people to just enjoy their existences.
No, I really feel that.
Yeah.
I think for me, I think what I've noticed is that with my favorite artists or the people whose practice I really admire, I think it's more so this emphasis on kind of understanding the context in which we live instead of just living within it, and kind of coming up with active ways to change the status quo, to basically support everyone in the same way, or to care for those that aren't cared for, or to highlight structures that are oppressive and destructive. or basically just filling in a gap where there seems to be a lack. I think that's, and then basically just doing that through aesthetics and through experiences and through art. And I think that's what I define my, that's what the role of an artist is to me. And just, I think continuing from that, it seems you have a question. So basically, we have Joseph Bond, who's said that we mentioned that everything is fixable in technology, whilst Danielle spoke about the ability to erase both data and identities. Could you speak on how you reconcile these two potential uses? Oh. Want me to read it out again, just in case?
Yes, please.
Yeah, please.
So we mentioned that, I mentioned that everything's fixable in technology, but then Danielle, you spoke about its ability to erase both data and identities. Could you speak on how you reconcile these two potential uses?
Yeah. So, okay, most of technology is code, you know, and so can be made to be fixable if you know the certain things, you know. But I fully believe, and this is going to be like, what? But I believe that most of the technology made is made to erase us. Like when I think about voice machines, when I think about the thing that you put your hand on to spit water out in the sinks in the bathroom, when I think about facial recognition on my computer, recognizing all of my friends and not my face, and so opens to every one of them. I believe that technology wasn't made for us. A lot of the code written wasn't made for us, but actually a lot of the objects within the machine are taken from some of the countries that we're from, and without any of the consent there either. So like reconciling these things are like, it's strange because often these spaces do not want us there. They do not want our input at all. They don't want us to be in the technology, to hold us, to even see us. You know, the technology isn't made to even understand how we talk. But at the same time, if we learn how to code our own way, then we can build on top of this and build separate from this. So it's a weird thing of I think that's why we have a big passion for this, to be honest. And a lot of tech people have, it's because something was made that didn't work for you. So you ripped it apart and remade it, and now it does. And so you were like, it was there all along, but this person that made it didn't take into account me. And so that's kind of how I feel about it.
Kind of continuing on that, I think for me it's the fact that I don't think technology is inherently destructive. I think destructive or oppressive. I think it's the people whose hands it's in. And I think you can really see these dynamics happening, for example, with the way that the government uses the internet or technology, within the way that people within the black market use, on the dark web use technology to counter them as well. And I think it really just depends on whose hands it's in. So I think kind of drawing on what began this whole conversation, us talking about our relationships with technology and the fact that it stemmed from us seeing something and kind of wanting to fill in a gap or to correct something or to fix something. I think that in itself is a testament to the fact that it's not technology itself that's destructive, but it's us and the way that we use it that can have potentiality for something amazing, basically. But no, that was an amazing question. Thank you, Joseph. We do have another question, which is, how might an emphasis on play change institutional priorities and programs? Which is it's a biggie.
I think it kind of might change the way we, I'm gonna try to say this the best way I can, how change our relationship with how we make art, I would say, and how we expect our art to be interacted with. In, like, for example, having these more enjoyable, carefree approach to making art without having you know, like these things in the back of your head, like, oh, I have to make art for these and these and these, and it needs to be shown in that. Or, you know, like having these very rigid frameworks within which you expect the artwork to be. Just, you know, like being able to be more free about it from the beginning of the process.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's one of the ways that I think about that.
Mm-hmm.
For me, if there's an emphasis on play,
Mm-hmm.
and that means there's an emphasis on audience participation,
Mm-hmm.
which could hopefully lead into some more accessible art in
Yeah.
terms of if someone has to physically play it.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully that leads into some more accessible kind of work being made.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not in content, but in terms of like physically, not that just being an Xbox controller.
Mm-hmm.
And actually there being, I'm sorry if I'm smacking my lips, there being a care around the audience and like wanting to get the audience to sit down and gain something off their experience with the art rather than like this passive view.
Yeah.
But at the same time, depends who they're asking to play. Depends who they're asking to make these playing things, you know. And as there's these gamers, and I'm sure you've probably heard it, all these gamers say all the time, we don't want politics in our games, you know, whenever they include a female character or a black character or a foot. And so like if they like engage with that kind of crowd, then you might get a similar kind of I don't know what to call it necessarily, but I tend to call it like art that's fun, but like there's nothing there.
Yeah.
You know, and like I'm flashing, but it looks good, and the interactivity is the appealing bit of it. But again, we may not be there, you know, because it's not like they're saying play in politics; they're just saying play. So we'll see.
No, for sure. I actually took the question on a complete tangent to the way that you guys did, interestingly, because I maybe can't speak to how an emphasis on play would change programs, but for me, institutional priorities, I think, for me, I really thought about it in the sense that thinking about the last institution I was very much embedded within, which is, for example, UAL, which I went to and I studied at. I think for me, play is something that I was actually offered a glimpse of, and it's something I got a clear taste of. This idea of, for example, now I feel like when I meet a lot of artists, I'm starting to see this whole idea of like, I don't think it's necessarily more about a specific discipline, but it's more about ideas. And then with the medium, that's you choose and you listen to what the idea tells you, and then you pick it on that. I feel like you don't get so much people that like, I only do drawing and I will only do drawing, and that's it. I think it's more so the fact that I have this idea, I think it will work as a game, or I think it will work as moving image work, or I think it will work as a sculpture. I think we're getting more of that. And I feel like that's kind of worrying maybe for our institutions who have kind of built themselves on basically training people who come into the spaces and being like, you've come to study painting, you're going to leave knowing how to paint. And also when they go out into the world, that then reflects on them. So I think an emphasis on play, which would maybe benefit the artists and maybe benefit the culture, essentially, is kind of against maybe the institution's priorities. And I think it's a very interesting question it's an interesting space for thought. Because I mean, imagine people were just taught to think and then make regardless, instead of being taught how to do something specifically.
Yeah.
I think if people were taught how to think more, I think the world might be a different place, essentially. So I think that's why I really wanted to discuss play, because I think it sows the seeds for a really interesting conversation in terms of how one works, especially in relation to artistic production. What could that sow the seeds of? And I feel like you guys, and yeah. But thank you so much. Let me just see if we have any more questions. No, but someone did say that, Danielle, your idea of distributing the platform's upkeep was an amazing idea.
Oh, thank you. So it comes to fruition.
It will at some point. But I think on that note, I think just to conclude, I hope people really took away, not necessarily one specific message, but I think like something about tactics. You drew something from the idea of like what people do within their practices, how they're trying to achieve their goals and why they do what they do. And then also in terms of power, they got insight into the way in which we explore power dynamics within our worlds and kind of move within a context where maybe we're not offered power and we're trying to reclaim it and we're being demanded from it.
Yeah.
And also in terms of play, I think I just concluded on that in terms of, I think I wish more people would play and I feel like find enjoyment in what they do. And I think once that happens, I think something amazing will happen. And apparently we have one more question. Someone asked, how do you make your work accessible for people past its technicality?
Does that mean content? I guess.
Yeah.
I guess so.
Yeah. So I think about this a lot, actually. So I guess for me, it would be in terms of writing, everything can be very, very easily understood. Every single work I make has subtitles, so you can read it off the page. So if you can't hear, you can read. Subtitles are very big, like they're ingrained part of the work rather than it being an add-on. It's part of the work. And I make a point to be very clear. Like for me, and it's not, I'm not to say everyone has to do this, but I love clarity. Like I love something being so clear that you can't say that you didn't understand what was said. And that's a lot of art is not clear, you know, a lot of art is conceptual and it's completely fine. But for me, I go the complete other way and say, okay, it's so conceptual. Here's the actual concept. Right to you. I'm going to tell you exactly what it is again and again and again and again and again and again. And then you leave and you're like, okay, I knew what that was about. And so for me, that kind of accessibility comes in very much so. But also if I can talk a little bit about technicality, okay. Is that when making experiences that you play, I often make them very simple. You can press them. It's just like maybe 3 buttons, not too many controls. Time, you get time to like process what you're seeing and react to it. Like blacktransarchive.com had 3 buttons to press, so you could just press them. And so everyone can kind of like go at their own pace rather than it be like a time-based response thing. So yeah, that's kind of how I approach it, at least. Like for me, accessibility is like a very key part of it. It's necessary for those that are like me and in my friend group, that they understand, like, and that my mum can understand at the same time.
Yeah. I guess for me, as my work is mostly image-based, I think that I try to make it as accessible as possible just by having it online. That's what I would say. Like I do enjoy having my work be accessible to lots of people, different people, from like independent of where they are. So for me, the best way to do that is to have my work really available online. But other than that, since my work is mostly just image based, I don't think much about that beyond having the work be accessible, like be viewable by people. Yeah, that's mostly what I think about it.
So did it cut off for a second?
Not for me.
But yeah, I think for me, in terms of making my work accessible, I think I do struggle with it sometimes, in the sense I feel like my work is usually like an amalgamation or like a very mix of lots of deeply interconnected. It's like an interconnected web of ideas.
Yeah.
I think it really stems from, like, for example, my love for like cerebral sci-fi films, which really helps. Like, I really draw from them in terms of like creating storylines or creating ideas. And I feel like I kind of love this idea of creating something that I think there's a very surface level accessibility where you understand the gist of it. But I think there's so many things you can look into underneath that then draw you to all these different things. But I do think I do like it to be quite accessible, whereas like you don't leave the work not understanding what it's about. I think it's pretentious and it's not helpful. But I think at the same time, I think there's kind of a beauty in making something that's not fully understandable, and then that makes you go home and kind of research things that you understood about, like the things that you got from it, and then kind of finding a path or like kind of revealing yourself to new information. I think there's something really beautiful about that. For example, I watched a sci-fi yesterday, couldn't hear a thing, didn't understand. Tenet, the dialogue is terrible, but it's a beautiful film. And I had to go and read about it, and I love it. I think I kind of love that experience in terms of like you kind of interacting with the work past the space that you viewed it in. But yeah, let me check if there are any more questions. No, I think that's all. And I think our time is up. But,
Amazing. Thank you so much.
thank you guys. I had such an amazing time. And I just thanks so much for taking the time to be a part of this and sharing your ideas.
Thank you.
No, thank you.
Can we do promo? Follow me on Instagram at LadyDanGFUA. And I have a new game releasing in approximately 8 days. No, exactly 8 days.
Lands, it's called.
Resurrection Lands. There'll be an Easter, there'll be like a little Easter hunt for the domain name. And starting in like maybe 7 days. So yeah, so like it'll be great if you follow me and see the game.
I'll do a shameless promo. Come to Arbeit to see Power Play. It's on until September 26th. Come down to the space. If not, there should be a VR experience coming to Arbeit on Screen, which is a platform that Arbeit has. And so you'll be able to experience it online as well and talk about accessibility. And then also, Enore, do you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, so I'm doing an online residency at thenewartist.co.uk and this week. And my Instagram is Capirotices, CAPIROTICES.
I forgot to add my Instagram handle. Kombri, that's KOOMBRI. But I think we had an amazing time here today, and just say thank you to Arbeit for allowing this to happen.
Thanks, Arbeit.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you, especially Rebecca Edwards and Edward Martin, the curators of Power Play. They really helped to put this together. So, yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah.
See you.